It was a quiet Monday morning in Bangkok, too quiet for a royal palace. The year was 1946. Thailand stood at the edge of a new world, recovering from war, dizzy with politics and unsure of what the future held. And at the center of this uncertainty was a gentle 20-year-old king. King Ananda Mahidol, Rama VIII. He had returned from Switzerland only months earlier. A young monarch, shy, thoughtful, more scholar than king. Those who knew him said he was a boy with an old soul, soft-spoken, polite, and always lost in thought. A king still learning how to wear the crown he never asked for. But on the morning of June 9th, everything changed. The palace servants would later recall the eerie stillness that lingered over the Baramthaman throne hall. Birds that usually chirped around the palace grounds were strangely silent. The air felt heavy, like a storm was about to break, though the sky was clear. Inside the king's private chambers, the royal pages moved quietly, careful not to disturb their young monarch. King Ananda was known to wake late. He rarely slept well, and lately he had seemed troubled, writing late into the night, staring out his windows as if the palace walls held secrets he alone could see. At 9 a.m. breakfast was prepared. By 9:20, there was still no movement from the king's room. By 9:30, his younger brother, Prince Bhumibol, only 18 at the time, walked toward the chamber door with a puzzled expression. Moments later, a single sound cracked through the palace. A sound that would change a nation. A sound that would haunt Thailand for generations. A gunshot. Servants froze. Guards turned toward the royal apartments. The palace fell into a stunned silence. Prince Bhumibol rushed into the room. What he saw would never leave him. King Ananda lay on his bed, motionless. A wound above his eye. His favorite .45 Colt pistol on the floor. No struggle. No sign of an intruder. No clear explanation. The palace descended into chaos. Court officials ran. Doctors were summoned. Messages flew through the corridors like frantic birds. No one knew what to say, what to believe, what to tell the world outside those walls. Within minutes, rumors began spreading. Whispers carried on trembling voices. Was it an accident? Was it suicide? Was the king murdered? The truth was locked inside that bedroom, and the only two people who entered before the officials arrived were the king's brother and a royal page. Both shaken, both confused, both unable to answer the one question pressing on every mind. How could a young king, calm, gentle, surrounded by servants, die by gunshot inside his own locked room? The official statements were hesitant, conflicting. Some said the king was cleaning his gun. Others said the wound didn't match an accident. Others whispered privately that the king had been emotionally troubled. None of these explanations satisfied the investigators or the public or even the royal family. Then came the investigation. A long, complex, painful inquiry that dragged on for years. Hundreds were questioned. 3 palace officials were arrested. But evidence contradicted testimony, and testimony contradicted the laws of physics. Every answer opened 10 more questions. International newspapers speculated. Foreign diplomats whispered. Thai citizens mourned and wondered, who would dare harm the king? Or if it was an accident, how could it happen so quietly? If it was self-inflicted, why? No theory fit perfectly. No conclusion satisfied every doubt. No one truly knew. And the deeper investigators dug, the more the palace seemed like a labyrinth of secrets. Closed doors, missing minutes, unclear movements, and strange gaps in the timeline that no one could fully explain. In those first hours after the king's death, Thailand lost more than its monarch. It lost its certainty, its stability, and its innocence. Prince Bhumibol would eventually ascend the throne as King Rama IX. But the shadow of that morning would follow him all his life. For how can a king outrun the mystery of his own brother's death? Even decades later, scholars, historians, and royal investigators still return to that single room inside the Grand Palace, trying to understand the impossible. For in that room, on that quiet June morning, a king died, a nation was shaken, and a mystery was born that has never, truly, been solved. The palace gates closed within minutes of the king's death, but whispers slipped through the walls like smoke. Outside, the city of Bangkok held its breath. Inside, the royal family struggled to understand the impossible. Prince Bhumibol stood silently in the corridor, pale, shaken, unable to grasp what had just happened. A boy who, a few hours earlier, was simply a younger brother, suddenly faced the unbearable weight of a kingdom. Officials arrived quickly, but each one carried a different kind of fear. Fear of the truth, fear of the consequences, fear of being blamed. The king's chamber, a place once filled with quiet innocence, now pulsed with unanswered questions. The investigators examined the room with trembling hands. The pistol lay near the bed, too far for an accident, too close for an intruder. The wound on the king's head raised more questions than it answered. And the timeline was full of vanishing moments. A royal page insisted he heard nothing. A servant claimed the king had been cheerful the night before. Members of the royal household remembered seeing him writing letters, smiling faintly. But others recalled something different, a heaviness in his voice, a restless look in his eyes. The more the investigators asked, the more confusing the story became. Some said the king always kept the gun beside his bed. Others said he barely touched it. Some insisted he would never harm himself. Others whispered that late-night stress and royal expectations weighed heavily on him. And then there was the door. Some witnesses claimed it was slightly open. Others firmly closed. No one could agree. No one could remember clearly. Panic has a way of distorting memories, and that morning was flooded with panic. The gunshot had echoed through the palace, but many said it sounded softer than it should have, like a muffled explosion. Investigators wondered whether something had blocked the sound, or someone. But no signs of struggle existed. Nothing was disturbed. No footprints. No broken objects. No forced entrance. It was as if time itself had sealed the room after the king fell. Hours turned into days. Days turned into weeks. A nation mourned but also questioned. The parliament demanded answers. Foreign observers grew suspicious. And behind closed doors, the royal household dreaded what the truth, any version of it, might mean for the monarchy. The investigation grew into something massive and uncontrollable. A simple inquiry turned into a political storm. Experts from abroad were brought in, reviewing the evidence again and again. But the more they looked, the stranger everything became. Nothing was certain. Everything was possible. And no one, not even those closest to the king, felt confident about what truly happened in that room. When the final reports were drafted, they contradicted each other. Some officials believed the king had accidentally shot himself. Others believed he had taken his own life. And a few, quietly and fearfully, believed something far darker. But none of the theories fit perfectly. None explained all the missing pieces. Thailand entered a period of turbulence. Suspicion hung in the air like a curse. And behind the scenes, pressure mounted for someone, anyone, to take the blame. Soon, the investigation would lead to a courtroom. And the trial that followed would become one of the most controversial in Thai history. A trial that raised more questions than it answered. A trial that scarred families and officials. A trial that, even today, remains clouded in uncertainty. And in the center of all of it, was the shadow of a young king gone too soon, leaving behind a puzzle that refused to be solved. The courtroom was filled to its corners. Journalists from across the world pressed shoulder to shoulder, their notebooks trembling with anticipation. The death of King Ananda Mahidol had grown from a palace tragedy into an international storm, a storm demanding responsibility, even without answers. 3 palace officials, men who had served the king loyally for years, were arrested. Their faces were pale, exhausted, marked by the disbelief of being accused of harming the young monarch they admired. They denied everything. Yet the pressure on the judges was enormous. The world demanded a conclusion, even if the truth remained tangled. The hearings unfolded like a tragic theater. Witness after witness stepped forward, but their statements clashed violently. Some changed their stories. Some contradicted their earlier testimonies. Some broke down in tears, unable to remember what they had seen in the chaos of that morning. Experts examined the pistol again. Then again. Then again. Each time, a new uncertainty appeared. The angle of the wound, the position of the bed sheets, the distance of the gun from the king's hand, every detail raised doubts. Nothing fit perfectly, and that was the problem. If it was an accident, why was the pistol so far? If it was self-inflicted, why no trace of struggle, despair, or hesitation? If it was murder, how did the killer escape unnoticed in a palace filled with guards? The judges wrestled with evidence that felt like sand slipping through their fingers. The public waited for answers, but the deeper the court dug, the more elusive the truth became. Years passed. The trial dragged on. The accused men aged behind bars, still pleading for justice. Prince Bhumibol, now King Rama IX, lived under the shadow of that tragedy. Historians would later say that the mystery of his brother's death shaped his entire reign, making him cautious, introspective, and determined to bring stability to a shaken nation. And then one day the verdict was read. A verdict that historians still argue about. A verdict that shocked even those who delivered it. A verdict that many believed was influenced more by the need for closure than by certainty. The accused were found guilty. But even after the sentence, doubts persisted, whispered in quiet corners, written in confidential letters, debated in foreign embassies. Some believed miscarriages of justice had occurred. Others believed powerful political forces had shaped the outcome. And others believed no human investigation could ever touch the truth, because the only person who truly knew what happened in that room was gone. Over the decades, scholars, writers, diplomats, and historians revisited the case, hoping to connect the scattered fragments. Some theories pointed to palace politics, others to personal struggles, others to external forces, but none could be proven beyond doubt. The room where the king died remains closed. The original evidence has long been sealed. The witnesses have passed away. And the story has become part of Thailand's deepest historical mystery. Today, nearly 80 years later, the death of King Ananda Mahidol remains one of the most puzzling royal tragedies in the world. A moment frozen in time. A question without an answer. A wound in history that refuses to heal. A young king. A single gunshot. A room full of silence. And a truth forever out of reach. Some mysteries belong to the world. But this one belongs to a nation, to a family, and to a king whose final moments remain hidden behind a door that has never truly opened. That is the story of Rama VIII. A story that ends not with answers, but with an echo.